Friday, December 28th, and today I'm going to be playing the highest I've ever played.
1025, you're on board.
Alright, thanks.
Am I nervous? Yep. Am I going to have the biggest losing session that I've ever had? It's possible. Am I going to be the fish in the game? God, I hope not. But will I win? We'll see.
We're playing with the big boys today. It's a 10-25 game, no cap. It's 5 times bigger than what I usually play. I heard it's a good game and I want to see if I belong. These are the stakes I'd eventually like to be playing consistently, so I have to take the leap at some point. If I run bad, it could take me a long time for my bankroll to recover. There's absolutely no safety net for me. I'm 100% on my own. I buy in for $3,000 initially, no need for me to overextend myself and try to cover the rest of the table. I can always add on later if and when I feel comfortable, but I won't have the option to take chips off the table. It's 5-handed to start, which adds more pressure because it forces me to get involved in lots of hands. Luckily, it appears there are only 2 other pros in the game. In the second hand I'm dealt, I pick up ace-queen offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun opens a 75. Small blind calls. There's merit to both 3-betting and calling to close the action. I'm not trying to dust off 3K in an enormous pot during my first orbit, so I take the conservative approach and call. 3 of us see the flop. The dealer puts out king 7-3 with 2 clubs. The small blind checks, I check, and the under the gun player bets 75. The small blind raises to 275. My decision's easy. I let it go. The under the gun player folds as well. A few hands later, we pick up 7-5 suited in the cutoff. I open to 75. The button calls, we're heads up, flop comes 10-9 deuce rainbow. I check, and the button checks back. The turn is a queen. This is a good card for my perceived range. I bet 100. The button doesn't give up, he makes the call. The river is a king. It's another card that's not bad for me. My range could contain some 2-pair hands, maybe some sets, and also some jacks for the straight. I fire 250. The button folds, and we're up small. Next we're dealt 7-6 suited in the big blind. Under the gun opens a 75. I defend for 50 more. We're heads up. The flop is queen 9-5 with 2 spades. It's the dark suit I deserve, but not the one I need right now. I check. The opponent bets 75 again. I call to see if I can drill a gutter or perhaps steal the pot with a bluff at a later point. The turn is the queen of spades. It's not a bad card for me. After check calling flop, I could definitely have a lot of queens and a lot of flush draws that got there. Could even have some full houses. I check. Under the gun checks back. You might be afraid that I've got a big hand. The river is the 3 of spades. There are 4 spades out there. I've got nothing, but it appears that the opponent might have given up on this pot. I don't think that he would have checked back many hands containing spades on the turn, especially high ones. Shouldn't have checked back any trips or full house hands either. I bet small as a bluff. Should be nearly as effective as betting large in this instance. I toss in 125 to make it look like I'm going for value. If the player doesn't have a spade, I imagine he'll just give up. To my surprise, the opponent checks his cards and then raises to 450. This doesn't make much sense to me. I'm not even sure what he's repping here. I don't even think he knows. Looks like he's trying to rep the ace-high flush, but a lot of the time he'll be firing a second bullet as a bluff on the turn once he bets the flop as a bluff with ace-high. Also, I can't think of a single full house that he could have other than potentially 3s full. I, on the other hand, could definitely have a few, and for that reason, I contemplate pulling the trigger for a re-raise. Let's see what I do.
Really don't believe you on this one, man. Really don't believe you.
God, you do it right now.
But I got 6-7 of clubs, so I can't really do too much.
I get gun shy and give up on that one. Now we play my first ever Eclipse pot for $200 each pre-flop.
An eclipse pot? What is an eclipse pot?
Eclipse is when the bomb button matches up for some reason with the regular button. You know, it's a 1 out of
Okay.
5.
So it's 200?
This great game.
There's 1,000 in the middle to start. We go 5 ways to the flop. Comes queen 10-3 with 2 hearts. We look down at 7-4 offsuit, face a bet, and we don't win this one. Here I've got pocket deuces in the small blind. It folds to me. I open to 100. The big blind 3 bets to 350. I make the call for 250 more. We're heads up. The flop comes 6-6-5 with 2 spades. I check. The big blind fires for 500. This is not a spot I really want to be in. There's a good chance I have the best hand. The problem is that I'm playing out of position. No turn card other than a deuce is going to make me feel much better. 3 or 4 wouldn't be bad, I suppose, but even if another 5 comes out, I'll be losing to all the hands that I'm currently beating. I convince myself to call, mainly because I don't want people thinking they can push me around. This is not necessarily a great reason. The turn is the jack of spades. I check, really hoping it's going to check back. It's not what happens. The big blind fires for 2,000. That's enough to cover me. I'm not getting it in with deuces and a baby flush draw. I fold. I was probably beat, but it's also possible the opponent made a move on me since he's aware that I'm playing bigger than I normally do, and if I called and beat him, it would hardly make a dent in his stack. Either way, it was a good bet by him. After losing a few hands, I'm stuck 1,300 early on, tired of wondering if I'm getting bullied or not, so I add on for 3,000 more. Having a larger stack may deter people from making moves on me since I could potentially punish them more. I'm in for 6,000 total. I've lost 5,500 in a single session before, but if I get stacked here and I don't come back from it, it'll be my biggest loss of all time. I don't want that to happen. Still, I'm going to try my best to play up to my potential without letting the fear of losing get in the way. I move over 1 seat, another rec player comes in, so we're 6-handed. I pick up ace-5 offsuit in the big blind. Under the gun +1 opens to 75, the small blind calls. Folding or calling both seem reasonable. I call for 50 more. The flop comes 6-4 deuce rainbow, the small blind and I check. Under the gun +1 bets 125. The small blind folds. This flop is much better for my range than it should be for the under the gun +1 player. I consider raising, but figure I'm getting decent odds to spike an ace or 3. I call and keep the check raise in my back pocket in case I want to use it on the turn. Dealer puts out the jack of clubs. I check. Under the gun +1 fires for 125 again. He seems scared. I don't want to fold for that small of a bet. I'm not too interested in calling either. I raised to 450, repping a set, 2 pair, or even a straight. The best hand my opponent is going to have is a set of jacks, and that's extremely unlikely. He shouldn't have any other sets. He'll mainly have 1 pair hands at best. It's a board that heavily favors the big blind, and I want to take advantage of it. Eventually, the player does call the raise, but he doesn't look too happy. The river is the 8 of diamonds. It's a card that probably shouldn't have helped either of us much. The opponent has his arms in a way that's blocking my view of his chips, so I lift my hands up and back away from the table while asking the opponent out loud how much he has left in his stack. He has headphones in, and the situation gets a little weird from here. He knocks on the table, out of turn to check. I've been around this game for a while, and I think I know what he's up to. The dealer is not wearing headphones and is aware I didn't check, so the action's still on me. It appears my opponent doesn't want to have to face a bet, and he's trying to get the showdown for free. For that reason, I'm going to fire. Originally, I was planning to make it around 1,000, but after seeing the out-of-turn check back, I don't think I have to risk as much, so I bet 800. He lets out a sigh, and he folds his hand quickly. We get that one through, making a move that pays off, and finally, we win a nice-sized pot. Not long after, I pick up pocket 7s in the big blind. The same opponent I bluffed in the last hand opens to 75 again from under the gun +1. The button calls, the small blind calls. I call for 50 more. 4 of us see the flop. It comes jack 9-7 with 2 diamonds. We flop bottom set in a multi-way pot. Small blind checks. I check. The initial pre-flop raiser bets 125 just like he did in the previous hand. Folds to me. This is too coordinated of a board to slow play. I need to get as much money in now as I can. I raise to 450. The player calls. I'm hoping for a blank. Dealer puts out the deuce of clubs, one of the best cards in the deck. The opponent has just over 1,000 left in his stack. I put 11 black chips out, hoping for a call. The player tanks, then ultimately folds. We don't get to stack anybody, but we win another decent one. It's always fun to make a big hand in a monster game. The very next hand, I get into a difficult spot with pocket jacks in the small blind. We're playing 7-handed, and under the gun +1 opens to 75. This player hasn't been getting involved much, so a raise from him catches my attention. The hijack makes the call, the action's on the button. He 3-bets to 350. There have been very few 3-bets by anyone, but I haven't seen any at all from the button. I feel handcuffed. I don't want to fold. I don't want to call and have the under the gun +1 player 4-bet and have to either get it in pre-flop or potentially fold. 4-betting feels like I'm over-repping my hand. I'm up against 2 players who are likely to be very strong. Figure I'm flipping at best, but I could be drawing incredibly slim. I avoid the tough situation and let my hand go. Under the gun +1, 4-bets to 1,000. The hijack gets out of the way. The button announces that he's all in. Under the gun +1 calls for slightly less. The dealer puts out the board. I'm hoping it's all over cards. Nope. It's 10 high. The button turns over ace-king suited. Under the gun +1 says,
Ungood, sir. Ungood.
Ace King wins it. I'm not sure there's much I could have done there. Certainly wouldn't have wanted to get it in with Jack's multi-way pre-flop, but if I did, I would have won a massive $8,500 pot. Still, the night isn't going too poorly. I'm only down $400. It'd be great if I stopped losing $100 and $200 bomb pots though. In this one, I pick up Jack 10 suited under the gun and open to 75. The big blind calls, the flop comes King 5-3. Big blind checks, I check back. The turn is a 9, giving me a gut shot straight draw. The big blind bets 75. I don't feel much like folding. Calling seems like it's lighting money on fire. I do enough of that already. I raise to 250 in hopes of winning immediately. I may play aces, kings, ace king, and certainly 9s this way. The player tosses in his cards quickly. We make another move to win a pot. Been playing for 2 hours. I'm actually a lot more comfortable in the game than I thought I would be. In the beginning, I lost several hands. Some of them were pretty big, so I was down 1,300 right away. And that was kind of scary. I wasn't sure if I was just gonna punt off a bunch of it or what. But the game has filled up. We're playing 9-handed now. It's a mix between pros and rec players. So like at Bellagio, it would pretty much be all pros if they were playing 10-20. It'd be like 8 pros, maybe 9, and either 0 or 1 rec player. So this has been good. Got some bluffs through, and I'm having a good time. I come back to the table and pick up ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff. Everyone is now straddling, so we're playing 10-25-50 from this point on. The size of the game has doubled. It's gone from 5 times the stakes that I usually play in Las Vegas to 10 times bigger. The player under the gun +1 limps in, folds to me, I raise to 200. The under the gun +1 player calls, we're heads up, the flop is 6-5 deuce with 2 diamonds, the opponent checks. I check back. Ace high should probably be good here a lot of the time. The turn is the deuce of spades, the player leads for 350. There's several draws out there. I'm not quite believing that we're beat. We don't have any blockers or straight or flush draws, making it more likely that our opponent could be on a draw himself. I call the 350, which may seem like it's a huge amount to call with just ace high, but we have to think about it in terms of big blinds. In this case, it's 7 big blinds. That's the equivalent of making a $14 call in a 1-2 game. Not that big. The river is about the worst card in the deck. It's the 4 of spades. All kinds of flushes and straights are possible. The opponent checks, I check back. Under the gun +1 shows that he limp called with 9-6 of hearts and took me to value town on the turn. I'm stuck 1,300 again. After losing a bomb pot and some straddles and getting through the blinds a few times, my stack dwindles to 4,300, so I get stuck 1,700 total before picking up 8-4 offsuit and a $100 bomb pot. The flop is Jack-Jack-4, checks to me in the hijack. I take a stab at it, betting 350. We don't get any resistance, and finally win a bomb pot, which I'm happy about because before that, I was stuck about $700 in him. This hand I'm including even though I'm not involved. It ends up being the biggest pot that I've ever seen, and it affects some of my decisions later on. The button 3-bets big pre-flop and is called by multiple players. The flop comes 10-9-8 rainbow. The cutoff leads into the button, who's the pre-flop aggressor, for 2,000, which is around a pot-sized bet. The button calls. The turn is a 4. It's about as big of a blank as it gets. The cutoff leads again for around 2,000. The button tanks for a long time, then shoves for roughly 5,500 total. The cutoff has him covered and makes the call. The river is a deuce. The cutoff turns over 7-6 suited. He flopped the low end of the straight and got a great run out. The button shows pocket aces, so he was drawing dead when he got it in. It's about a $17,000 pot. That's for sure the biggest one that I've ever been at the table for, and it completely changes the dynamics of the game. The button goes from being one of the largest stacks at the table to busting, and is definitely tilted. He rebuys for 3K more. The cutoff has tons of chips after winning and isn't afraid to get involved at all. He plays quite a few hands. Shortly after I pick up ace-queen offsuit in the cutoff, the big stack limps in for 50 from middle position. The hijack seems like he wants to get revenge and raises to 250. Probably have the best hand. I don't want to call and let someone behind me enter the pot relatively cheaply or 3-bet big and put me in a weird spot. I 3-bet myself to 700. Everyone folds. I'm happy to take it down. Later I'm dealt ace-king offsuit under the gun +2. Under the gun +1 calls the 50. He's the player that I just 3-bet previously. I raise to 200. He calls. We're heads up. The flop comes Queen Jack 10 rainbow. We flop the nuts in position against a tilted player while playing by far the biggest game of my life. The opponent checks. thinking about how I can make the most money possible. The limp call pre-flop, so I can't imagine he's going to have all that much that'll connect with a board of all high cards. I go with a bet at 175. It's a down bet, but I want to keep his calling range wide. Should never really have a set on a board after limp calling pre-flop, and there aren't any draws to worry about either. He thinks it over, then makes the call. I really want this turn to be a blank, but it's not. It's the Queen of Hearts to one of the worst cards in the deck. If somehow my opponent called for the Queen on the flop, he's likely to have another Broadway card to go with it. Many of those are now boats. The opponent checks. I'm not too worried yet, and I don't want to check, giving the opponent a free card and a chance to take the lead. I bet 350. The player just flats again. This would be a great time for a deuce on the river. Not today. Dealer's making it difficult. It's a 9. The opponent checks. I'm additionally losing to Queen 9 and pocket 9s now, but any 8 or King makes it straight, so I can definitely extract value from those types of hands. Part of me wants to check because this board has gotten a little scary, but there are just too many hands that I can get value from, so I go for it, betting 800. The player doesn't look thrilled. He thinks it over for quite some time. He eventually tosses in a chip to make the call. I turn over the ace high straight, and it's a winner. I get 3 streets of value, inducing what I believe is a light river call out of the opponent. I don't have the slightest idea what he had. I take down a big pot for me, but really it's just a medium-sized pot for this game. I'll take it. I'm all the way out of the $1,700 hole I was in earlier, and I'm currently up $1,000 on the session. Couldn't be much happier, except I then lose a $200 bomb pot. Aside from that though, life is the best. I pick up pocket 8s in the big blind, the hijack limps in, small blind calls, I call for 25 more. The under the gun straddler checks, 4 of us see the flop, becomes 6-5-3 with 2 diamonds, small blind checks, this is a decent board for us. I bet 100 before one of the 97 possible bad turns comes out. 2 players fold, the small blind calls. This is the gentleman who I completely disdominated in the ace-king hand. That's a mix of destroyed and dominated. Anyway, he's had a rough few hands and seems to be unraveling. The turn is the 9 of hearts, the small blind checks. At first the turn doesn't seem like it's a great card because it's an overcard and 8-7 makes it straight, but what 9s is my opponent really going to have? He could potentially have some flush draws containing a 9, but hands that are beating me like 9-8 and 8-7 are a lot less likely because I have 2 8s. My opponent can still have a lot of flush draws, hands containing a 4, or hands containing a 6 that I'm ahead of that might call a bet. I fire, betting 225. It's important to go for value on the turn against the range that I put my opponent on because a lot of his holdings are going to be weak and may have no value once the river comes out, so he won't be able to call a bet then. The small blind considers his options, then matches the 225. The river is the jack of hearts. The player checks. I check back, and here's some of my favorite words.
Missed it.
I turn over the 8s. They're good. Small blind turns over 10-4 offsuit. He flopped a straight draw. Didn't get there. We're up 1,200. In the final hand of the night for me, I'm dealt pocket 10s in the cutoff. The big winner so far limps in for 50 from middle position. I make it 200. The under the gun straddler calls. Limper calls as well. 3 of us see the flop. It's 9-9-4 rainbow. No overcards. Seems pretty safe. The under the gun player checks. Then the middle position player bets into me for 575. I don't particularly like this situation, and I have a lot of thoughts running through my head simultaneously. One of which is that the opponent took a similar line when he flopped a straight in the hand when he won the $17,000 pot. He bet right into the pre-flop aggressor, so I know he's capable of doing this with big hands. He's not the only person I have to worry about either. There's another player still involved that could have me beat too. If I call, there are several overcards on the turn that I won't want to see. Even undercards will have me wondering if I'm ahead. This pot could potentially get massive. I'm up against somebody who seems to be a rec player and has money from other means. I'm sure he's properly rolled to be in the game. He can put a lot of pressure on me. I could lose my entire 7K stack after going on a 3K upswing from my low point in the session. I'm not adequately rolled to be playing here. I was in a groove and comfortable for a while. I'm no longer comfortable. I fold an overpair to a single flop bet that's the equivalent of just 11.5 big blinds. The under the gun player folds as well. I never find out if the middle position player has me beat. If I'm afraid to call in this scenario, it's clear that it's time for me to leave, booking a win in my first session, playing the highest stakes I've ever played.
That's it for the session. It played pretty big. It was 10-25-50 for about the second half of it. And I was running pretty cold in the beginning. I was real worried that I was just gonna lose a lot of money, but ended up making that big hand with the ace king and booked a $1,000 win, which is great. Played for about 3 hours and 40 or 45 minutes or so. So that was fun. Not sure when the next time I'll be playing 10-25-50 is, but it's just nice to book a win when you step up in stakes and not get crushed.
That's it for episode number 81. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons because it helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, particularly about moving up in stakes, feel free to let me know because I'm happy to get back to you. This was a very special episode for me. I had 100% of myself. I was pretty nervous going into it, but conditions were, it just felt right to go ahead and take a shot, really push myself. I hadn't really pushed myself much in 2018. I kind of wanted to do it before the year was over. So I heard the game was great, and Graydon's allowing me to film sessions there. So that's something that's important to me because I'm allowed to document the experience, share it with you guys. There's certain things that I wish I would have done differently in the session, but I included them anyway, just because that's how it works when you move up. You know, you get involved in some situations that put you out of your comfort zone and you know, are a little bit scary. But my bankroll was in a good spot. 2018 was a decent year for me, so if I lost like 6K or more, then that definitely would have hurt, but it wouldn't have changed my day-to-day life too much. And for that reason, I jumped in the game, and I'm happy that I did. I feel like I grew a lot as a poker player, so next time I play bigger, I think that I'll be a lot more comfortable and I'll be a lot more prepared. Hopefully, I'll be playing those stakes, you know, multiple times a week in the future. But for now, I'm gonna stick to 2.5 and 5.10, and maybe eventually I'll get to that level. But got a couple meetup games coming up. Andrew and I will be playing at the Texas Card House in Austin, Texas, January 22nd and January 23rd. It's our first ever 2-day meetup game, so we're super excited about that. Then from there, we're going to San Antonio. We'll be at the Rounders Club January 24th. We'll be playing 5-5 no limit there, and it's gonna be a good time. If you're in the area, come hang out, have some drinks, and play poker with Andrew and I. I'm gonna have some more information regarding those meetup games down below in the description box, so definitely check that out. Hope you guys are all doing well. Good luck at the tables, and I'll see you next time.